There's Zach. I guess I'll let him in before we get started. Okay, so hello everybody. Looks like we're kind of approaching the end now. It's module 7, stretching everything out, all the modules out for 2 weeks. We still got a couple weeks left, but down to the last 2 modules, and there's not really much going on in module 8. So hopefully all the progress on the software is going okay. I believe both teams have kind of dived into that pretty deeply, and we've got all the paperwork done. So now it's just the fun part left, putting that together. And like we discussed last week, it's kind of nice for other people to see the fruits of our labor. So I set up a discussion board where you can share your project with the other team. Both of you all have web-based apps, so sharing with the other team, I guess, post a link on that discussion board so your classmates can see your application. And yeah, so the reading material for chapters or module 7, if you saw that, is a section about quality control and configuration. And quality control is a really good example of what I encountered every time I went to put the lecture together this semester. It's so much of the content, when I start writing out notes and things to talk about, I end up scribbling all kinds of things off the list because it feels like it should really be common sense at the level you are at in your education, right? And quality control is kind of like that. It generically we could say testing, but usually if we give it that detailed name, quality control, we mean the very detailed testing, the thorough, like after the general debugging testing's done, just going through another pass and making sure everything's tip top notch and going to stay that way. I had 2 little notes to talk about for that, and then we'll do the team stuff. The first one has to do with testing and debugging. I guess it kind of fits there, but it kind of goes more in the quality control area, and that is looking ahead, right? When we're testing stuff like web-based apps, you're going to test those on Chrome and Firefox. Edge is Chrome anymore. If y'all didn't know, Microsoft dropped their thing and they just picked up the Chromium engine. So it's Edge and Chrome are exactly the same anymore. I believe one of the other big ones was switching to Chromium as well. So it's even more, the browsers are essentially the same. So that's what we're going to test all the stuff on. But that covers today. Remember to look ahead. Y'all might have seen it. A lot of the antivirus companies have begun putting together more secure browsers because that's been an issue over the past couple of years. Y'all might remember, wasn't too long ago in the news, there was some security issues and Congress wanted to yell at some people, and Google's the big name, so they went to yell at Google. And well, we're all computer people. We kind of know what Google is, right? Okay, that's the middleman that puts ads on the page. They're not the security people. They don't really have much to do with security breaches, and they tried to do a few things, but since then, over the last year or so, some of the security things, the antivirus software companies have begun putting together secure browsers. I know the Avast one. I have Avast installed on my machine whenever it doesn't freak out about the code I'm writing and force me to uninstall it. But it went ahead and installed that browser, changed all kinds of configurations, and set up all that security stuff automatically. And they're not the only company that does that. So that's something to keep in mind, right? That doesn't cover everybody right now, but it might before too long, as more and more of those antivirus and security companies start to put together better browsers. Is your app going to run in that new more secure browser as well as it does in Chrome and Firefox? So something to, kind of peeking ahead and checking that. It wouldn't fail the debugging test for today, but it is definitely something to consider. That's why I wanted to mention it with that more refined terminology of quality control instead of the average testing. But very, very thorough testing is what it's for. And for software people, oh, I guess a standard analogy would be just some factory output, maybe a t-shirt factory, right? The quality control seems fairly straightforward there. But hopefully we can draw some analogies, right? In a t-shirt, if one of the sleeves is sewn shut, that's definitely a quality control issue. So, we want to reject that batch. If something got folded on the way through the machines and the sleeves are like at right angles to each other, where the person could technically still stick both their arms in there, it's still not up to par, right? If they're by the human body, the sleeves should be back a little, almost, we might as well say straight across. Like sleeves in a t-shirt should be straight across from each other so the arms go in nicely. So draw an analogy with your software. Close enough isn't always close enough. If you've done a lot of debugging and seen big problems, the close enough might seem closer to your perspective than a user that opens it for the first time and sees it. It's like, something's a little bit off about this software. Kind of like a t-shirt, the sleeves are just slightly in the wrong spot. The arms will still go in the t-shirt, and it still works as a t-shirt, but it might fit funny and just kind of feel weird as a person walks around wearing that shirt, which is going to make them not like that shirt. And try to draw analogies from that with the software. Close enough what seems like close enough when you're tired and exhausted might not seem close enough to a user that is fresh and bright-eyed and seeing it for the first time. They may have some different things. The other big point I wanted to talk about with that is that leads to a lot of things about testing. So we want to make sure we set up some automated testing, which is a fairly straightforward process, but sometimes we have to make adjustments. So I wanted to kind of go through a quick example of that, just an automated testing process. I'm going to share my screen and make up a perhaps overly trivial example. I know there's a couple Linux users in here. Hopefully what I'm going to do will translate right over. So let's say we have this piece of software. I'm doing an overly trivial example, and like an intro Python course, maybe get some user from an input, get some input from a user. I said that completely backwards. Get input from a user, like their name, and generate a custom hello message. Should be fairly straightforward here. Everybody's seen Python, right?
Yes.
I don't really want to print this to the screen. I'm going to write it to a file with, well, I should save this so it changes colors for me. I'll just do it in my delete folder. I'm not doing anything here worth keeping. I'll just call it soft.py. So a piece of software. So with open, I don't know, output.txt, we'll append stuff to it as to-file, to-file.write. I just didn't want to print it right back to the console. I wanted something else so we can, because we're going to talk about automating tests. So I wanted something that we would still see the results of the test from, not just right to the console. But basically print a really long way to say print. Hello plus the username. Oh, and we're in the file, so plus a line feed. Everything there should look straightforward, right? Just like, I guess not quite day one of Python. If that said print instead of open a file, it would be day one lesson of Python. But the most basic piece of software. So open the command prompt. I found out recently they moved this from what it used to be, or there used to be 2 shortcuts to this, and this one's been around for longer, and a lot of people learned the newer shortcut, and when they got rid of the newer shortcut, people didn't know the old one. But if you're on a PC, if you hit Windows X, that's how you get to all of the control software, basically, like the command prompt. So that's a quick way to get in that. So we can run this file. Let's see where I'm at. So hopefully what I'm doing in the command prompt is simple enough that the Linux users in the class will be able to translate it right over. There's nothing too fancy here. So just change the directory to, I'm at there. So documents, delete folder. I think that's where I put it. And then we can run that script, soft.py. Ask for a name, we'll give that, and now there should be a text file with a custom message. Really a super stripped down, hopefully not too oversimplified example to get the main point across here, but yeah, got this output file here, kind of shows what's in there. And if we run that again, soft.py, kind of go through the whole thing. I'll just make up a name. Should reload it. Yeah, so it looks like it's kind of working okay. Takes a while to get all the test stuff in there that way, right? So usually we want to automate a process, but automating the process, we might have to make some slight adjustments. That's the main thing I wanted to point out here is I've seen some automations fail because people try to do it without adjusting their software. And they should be trivial adjustments, but like here, we're asking the user for input every time, which that's the part that's not really going to work with automation. So in order to automate this, we might have to like grab it as system arguments. So if we like import sys, and then instead of getting it from the user, we'll get it from the command prompt, and my thought was write a batch file that just does that 100 times or something. So automating the test so we can test all sorts of input all at once. And it does require a slight modification, but you just want to be very, very careful when doing that. And make thorough notes so that everybody on the team and stuff can tell what's going on. So like modify input source for automated testing. Because it's kind of hard to actually feed this input in every time. We wouldn't be able to get thorough tests. And to do that, we'd have to sit there and type those words, sit there and type it 100 times. Which if we sit there and type a name in and check the output 100 times, our eyes are going to get blurry and we might overlook some stuff. It's much better to have it all automated and do it all at once. So what is this? It's argv, I think. So the first system argument will be the name of the software, and the second argument, we'll pass the second argument in as a password. So this is an automated test. We're writing it right now, so we don't have. In more complicated situations, you might need to search through the arguments to make sure you have the right one, or two, or however many inputs you want. There should be the second one if we type it in that way. So I'm going to give that a check real quick. Yes.
Does Python support dependency injection?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Like interfaces and stuff like that. So like
coming in from other places.
Well, like like Java has like interface where you can define like the contract between like what you can implement.
Oh, yeah, requirements. Not really. There's
Okay.
a class called ABC that allows for some abstraction that would allow you to make that you could essentially make something like an interface, but it would be a little bit. It wouldn't quite behave the same.
Okay. Because if you were able to do, if you wrote an interface, I don't know if you can, like I said, I don't know if you can do it in Python, but if you wrote an interface that defined a class that, or a contract of getting input from the user, and then you could, like when you go into test, instead of like passing in the concrete class that would actually get from the user, you could pass in a test class that would be getting from like a test file. So like the interface
that's
would
what
just
I
be
was
good
doing.
at.
That's what I was going to do here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I guess in a roundabout way, yes, this does support what you were asking, but not through structured interface, object-oriented interface like we have in C++.
Okay.
There is a class that allows for abstraction, but it is somewhat limited.
Okay.
So I'm going to check and make sure I remembered the right commands there. Open this. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So that passed it in. That way we don't have to manually type it in. We can, from that check, we can see it was exactly the same as that line where I manually typed it in. Where'd my file explorer go? I'm going to get rid of that original output file. And I want that to happen a lot, right? So a certain number of times. So I'm just going to write a batch file, which I guess for Linux users, a shell file. The logic should be very similar because I don't need anything fancy here. I just need it to happen 100 times, right? Or 20 times, or however much the test is going to run. I'm going to save so I get the colors. I'll just call it soft.batch. I'm just going to do a for loop straightforward. So for some file, add in, oops, not $, a variable in, I guess I need the file test data.txt, do that command. So start Python, run soft.py, and oops, pass in the variable. Anything else there? I think that's all I need. And we can create some test data, make sure that works. Chris, I'm just making up some names. Bob, Trevin, Devin, Scott, Greg. Now we should be able to just loop through that whole file, and hopefully Linux users can translate that. It should be straightforward to loop into a file. I think that's actually a lot easier in Linux, but we read in the file, put it in an array, and then do a while loop or something. But that gives us a way to run that a lot of times. Or it should. Let's check. That took a long time. Got the output file though. Yeah, so it just kind of ran through that test file and gave us lots and lots of tests. Or can start adding nonsense to this. Add a couple blank lines. I'll hold shift and put a bunch of characters in. Mash random letters, all the normal testing stuff, right? Let's see what this stuff, some of these do. Just kind of mashing characters or check for things that would be valid Python statements, right? X equals 3, X plus equals 5, and X. And all this is just going in as test data so that we can run that batch file over and over and over again without sitting there manually typing the stuff in. If we're sitting there staring at a screen, our eyes are going to get tired. If it's all automated, I don't know why it's going so slow here. That's a batch file with like 2 lines in it. It should take us, maybe Zoom's slowing it down. Zoom's wanting all the RAM or something. And then we can check and see if anything went wrong. Right? So like here, looks like we actually got the words print X, and it didn't run that Python command. Here we actually got a bunch of line feeds. It didn't actually give us line feeds and all the normal testing, right? None of the special characters did that. So it's sort of a straightforward process just for testing it, but it did require some slight modification, right? The automated testing wasn't exactly the same as the original piece of software, which is a necessity. So like for y'all's applications, you may want to check things like the logins and things. You have to adjust it, do a similar thing and pass in login information from a batch file or a shell file for Linux users, and run a bunch of automated tests without wearing out your eyes before looking at the results. Put it in the file and then come back a little while later when you know you're seeing clearly and can examine the results very closely. I kind of wanted to share that thought, and there is also a lot of automated tests already available, right? Both of y'all have both teams, not both of y'all, both teams. So all of y'all have web-based stuff. So it might take a little bit of finagling, but I bet you could get that to run through Google's automated Android app software and check logins and security and all this stuff that way. Make sure it would meet the criteria to get on the Play Store or some of the automated tests like that. Actually, if you look for quality control, I searched it earlier, quality control and software development. There is a lot of software available. Oh, maybe there's something else I searched. Quality control. Maybe just quality control software. Compliance, life, intellects. Nope, that looks like it's going to the other stuff. Quality control software or software development. Normal Google searches. There's some stuff out there, but a lot of the automated tests that's already available. You run through there and make sure here we go. It's an ad, but quality control software that is basically just to do automated testing on your software. It has all that stuff out. Basically like that batch file we just looked at. There's a few free ones on there. Uh, yeah, it looks like those are for big systems, and it's running really slow because this is install.
Hey, I know Kali Linux has a bunch of like tools you could use for testing. I don't know if that might be. No, I didn't use much of Kali Linux, but I don't know if you've.
I haven't used Kali Linux in a while, but
Yeah.
yes, they have some a lot of those automated tools built in, which are basically doing this. So it's not too hard to write something. You know, if you're using Linux, write a shell script that I think you have to read the file into an array first and use a while loop to go through the array. But it's essentially the same logic. Just loop through a bunch of test data and check things. And we're software developers. We know how to put this stuff together, right? We know how to build programs. So along with your program, put together something that can automatically test it. And I wanted to point out, the main thing I wanted to point out was how in that software, I made that super trivial example to express the point that sometimes we have to make slight modifications in order to really automate the testing. Right? Because if the software is set up to constantly get human input, it might not receive input from a bot quite as good, very efficiently. So you might have to comment out that line and try to minimize what has to be changed, but it can still give you a very thorough idea of what's going on with that. So I just kind of wanted to point out an example of that and at least show how short a batch file to write automated testing is. Because I pulled up, well, the list wasn't loading, but you saw there was lots of Google results for that sort of thing. As Greg pointed out, Kali Linux has a lot built in. And I was thinking for web-based stuff, it wouldn't take much adjustment to just run it through Google or Amazon's testing services, or not Amazon. Amazon doesn't care what you sell. Google or Apple's automated testing to make sure the app would meet the qualifications for their store. Or Microsoft just changed their testing requirements. So they have much better security testing now if that's a big issue for you. Run through Microsoft's new testing services, which is really for apps going on the Microsoft store. But those aren't like certification exams. They'll let you have the test so you can practice that with your software before going to upload it to their store. They're not closed-in things that you have to pay for. You can download their testing software and run it through that. But what I wanted to show there was it was 2 lines in a batch file, and one of those was just turning the verbose feedback off. So it really doesn't take much at all to set up automated testing and just run through thousands and thousands of tests super quick, way quicker than you could sit and type things in. So keep that in mind as you get the software together, as it comes together. Remember how easy it is to automate the software, and you get much more thorough testing done that way. That was the big thing I had on there for tonight with quality control. It should be easy to draw analogies from quality control of basically any other product in our society. Just you want to do a little bit better than close enough, typically, because especially with software, people are going to jump on Facebook and tell everybody they know about it. So hopefully they're going to say good things about your software, right? That free advertising is really nice if they're getting on Facebook or Reddit and telling everybody they know good things about your software. If they spread the word to thousands of people very quickly that the software is lousy, that's not such a great thing. So you want to make sure everything is really up to par and think ahead. Sometimes we can easily make predictions of what's coming. All those secure browsers are going to be the next big thing, because that's the result of I guess it really came out from all the security issues happened in an election year. Congress wanted somebody to yell at, so they yelled at the browser makers. And so it's an easy prediction to make that is those secure browsers are coming in force soon. So make sure your stuff runs in there as well as it does in the normal browsers that we use today. Keep the easy predictions in mind. So that's pretty much all I had on tap to talk about for tonight. It was about half an hour, 31 minutes, pretty close. So I guess we'll split up into groups and get working on the projects, the fun part. So let me open the breakout rooms. 2 rooms. And let's see who's here tonight. Craig, Scott, and the other room, Kevin, Trevin, Zachary. All right, y'all should see the buttons, and I'll be in there in just a moment to check on the progress.